Studios, the AusBiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Hi there, welcome to the COB. It is a Thursday afternoon, the 20th of November. I'm Nadine Blaney.
I'm Juliet Sarli, and you know, this time yesterday, Nadine, I was sitting here, I know you were sitting somewhere, we were all sitting somewhere worried about what was going to happen to Nvidia. I've said this a couple of times today. It's a little bit like being nervous that your most reliable friend is not going to turn up to your party. And of course it did turn up to the party.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We are now post the Nvidia, nail-biting sort of situation. And how's it turned out for the local market today? Well, we were feeling a bit nervous, weren't we? We were a bit negative, 6 sessions in a row down, but up today by about 1%. That's the CBO Australia market on your screen right now. That's where it will finish. So up 1.12% to be exact. Still a few trades going through the ASX. It is sitting at 8,552, up by 1.23%. So what do we say? All's well that ends well? Is that as simple as it is?
I think it was just as well that, this is not, and we have had so many conversations with guests about this when we get to the themes of the day about these craving for chips. This is not what we saw with the dot-com boom in 2000. I mean, that's pretty much what 90% of the people we talk to say.
Yeah,
correctly?
Interesting though. Yeah, we've got plenty of guests online if you'd like to check those interviews, saying that this has put to bed that whole sort of AI nervousness that had really taken hold of the market in the past week or so. Others though are saying, well, it's just delaying the inevitable and that there's still a lot to come out in the wash. But what we do know as we follow the number, I know that the technical analysts always tell us to say, follow the price action, follow the tape, and tech has risen to the top, hasn't it?
It has indeed. So tech to the top, and also some mining momentum as well. And I think that can really be driven by what we saw with Liontown today, very much soaring. So of course, that was another really big positive amidst what we also saw in some of these rare earths. So you had Linus up after a UBS upgrade, and gold stocks looking good as well. So let's get into some of the sectors of the day and kick it off with those tech players here, which saw a nice rebound. WiseTech, of course, a little bit of a director reshuffle there. Block, one of the standouts.
And related to Bitcoin as well,
yes,
to be fair.
Yeah, up by more than 11%. And Tech One, we spoke to the CEO earlier this week, Ed Chung. He is still very positive on his company's outlook, and Zip up by more
He's
than 5%.
probably thinking, wow, I wish we would have put our release date on the day after Nvidia reported. 9 out of the 11 sectors are higher. The only laggards that we're seeing right now, utilities and energy. But boy, lithium is one that we've been keeping a very close eye on, with Pilbara again today up by 4%, MinRes, and then Liontown, punchy 9%, core lithium 16% to 26 cents per share.
And I mentioned gold also rising. UBS upgrading its gold outlook to a peak of $47.50 an ounce from $3,900 previously. Northern Star, Evolution, Newmont, Ramelius, Genesis, all looking very solid. Energy stocks, though, you did see a dip today. And I had a great chat to Zoran Kresovic from Blueberry Markets earlier, saying, look, watch that $60 litmus test, I guess, for oil to break through, and that could be a potential downside. But Woodside, Santos, Karoon, Ampol, Beach, all down today between about 1 to 2.5%.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When you think about the ripple effects across the market as well, we've seen uranium miners here in Australia jumping as that Nvidia-fueled AI optimism powers the sector. So forecasting fourth quarter revenue beat above Wall Street estimates was enough to do it for Nvidia, and I think relieve a lot of potential downside risks in the market.
Absolutely. Looking at Droneshield, Mark Gardner from MPC Markets yesterday telling me anything below $2 looks attractive to him. They were defending the handling of direct share sales. Remember, CEO Oleg Vonik sold his entire $50 million stake last week. Look, they basically said it was tax implications. Still a little bit of downside today as well, particularly in the wake of that exit of the US CEO.
Yeah, but I also think it's really interesting, and credit where credit is due. The AFR speaking to people that we don't have access to, about questions over the technology itself now. And I have to think, and this is me taking my pure journalist hat off, and it's a bit editorializing, forgive me for it, but if they all hadn't sold out all of their ordinary shares, would there be as many questions in the microscope and on their technology as much as it is now? Because now I think if I was a shareholder or for shareholders, now they've actually got to worry about the technology more than anything, which wasn't really being called into question, at least in mainstream media before.
True, but millionaires are made when markets are down, and Droneshield, as Mark said yesterday, below $2 looks attractive. A2 Milk, it lifted its revenue guidance for 2026 on a Kiwi dollar appreciation. Shares up just marginally today.
Yeah, Liontown, so that's what you were alluding to, reporting a strong result from its inaugural online auction of lithium spodumene concentrate, BUBs as well. Look, it's outlined revenue guidance of between 120 to 125 million for the FY26 year.
All right, let's get to our guest. Jimmy Zhang from GBA Capital joins us. Jimmy, this time yesterday we were sweating. It seems like it was unfounded and we've been worried for no reason.
Of course, something that I've been kind of sharing the same feeling for the past few days. But look, it's a classic anticipatory positioning, right? So obviously they expected to post with about full year revenue growing about close to 230% year on year. Yeah, we're talking about $57 billion in that market. So it's kind of a number that you really never see at this scale. And most importantly, the company's Q4 guidance is extremely strong. And Jensen Huang also came out saying that the Blackwell supply shortages are easing. Got grounds of that 35,000 units to be deployed. So that GPU demand remains exceptionally strong, and obviously that regained, like you guys just mentioned earlier, that confidence around the AI. So a really great day for the tech, and it is something that investors must be wary when these type of big names start to report. But it also doesn't mean that you should start jumping in right away. It is something that we should be monitoring closely, but not something we react very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, one session does not a day make, one result does not a trend make. So it's fair to say then, Jimmy, isn't it, that a lot still hangs on what the good old Federal Reserve will do when it comes to interest rates?
Yeah, I mean, that's the topic of the day for a lot of investors now, especially in the institutional level for the past few months now. There's changes every week now, and we're kind of also seeing that another sentiment coming through that it is now a little bit more likely that we'll see that Federal Reserve cutting rates at least once more this year. But another main thing is that if we look at the FOMC minutes. We obviously did warn that the expectations of that, rate cut is too aggressive. But, we also saw the President Trump especially commenting around the fact that, the family and Fed policies are harmful, have been kind of observed without kind of derailing that sentiment. So it is kind of market essentially looking past that kind of noise. But the real anchor, though, is that sharp drop in the Treasury yield. So we saw that 10-year fell into about that 4.5% range, which is kind of supportive for the equities across the board. So I think largely, it is a little bit leaning more towards a rate cut, but only time will tell.
All right, well, let's get to some of the stock specifics today. And we mentioned Liontown looking really good on that online auction of its spodumene. It feels like lithium's now back in favour somewhat, Jimmy.
Yeah, lithium is having that bit of a moment again. We saw the Chinese lithium carbonate future breaking that 87,000 per ton, which is the highest level that we saw in close to 14 months now. So in the macroeconomic standpoint, China is doubling their EV charging capacity to about 180 gigawatts by 2027. And the supply is being watched very closely. So, Catalyst, Jingxiang mine is about 3% of the global supply. Just got that approval to restart after suspension. But, Ganfeng, which is another mine, is also forecasting about 30% demand growth next year. So the ingredients for this kind of price recoveries are all there. And, we've been kind of preparing for this moment for a while. Obviously, it is suffering moments until we see these kind of like a news flows coming out. But I think definitely, like you guys mentioned, lithium is something that's going to be the topic of the day for the next few months.
Okay, so same as the caution that you expressed when it came to, one result coming through from Nvidia as calming the horses. I mean, if the prices for lithium go well, doesn't that just mean that supply is going to come to meet the price, and that could therefore, put a kibosh on any of the enthusiasm we're feeling right now?
Yeah, you're very, very correct in saying that. But at the same time, if we see that kind of supply kind of coming up from our view, what we can also expect is the what we've been really expecting for the past few years. So we've been expecting for this batteries demand and electric vehicle demand to be increased to about 30 to 40% or even double towards 2027. And it's only a matter of time we see that kind of price of lithium obviously jumping to what we saw back in 2019. It's pretty difficult to say that that's something that we might replicate very soon, but it is definitely because obviously a lot of these valued companies has been smashed for a very long time for the past 3 years, along with the price of lithium. That could be another triggering point for us to kind of re-see these companies that's been quite undervalued and slowly allocate into the portfolio since we see the attraction in the price of lithium.
Hey Jimmy, about a month ago you told me about Ameria. What's happening there?
Yeah, look, it's one of the companies that I've been advocating for a long time, and it's probably one of the most interesting structural growth stories in the Australian healthcare right now. So they've just recently raised $8 million, and GBA Capital was one of the joint lead managers, had the privilege to assist with the company's raise. But the big picture is that they've recently exercised their Mornington option, which is securing that real good pathway to build their first Victorian MPEX clinic within the Vibe Health's flagship hospital. And they've also expanded their national agreement, which Ameria now has the exclusive rights to negotiate clinics. And Vibe Health has about 4 hospitals and 2 is under construction at the moment. So I think it's again in that really good point where they're now in that expansion mode, and every clinic they will be opening from here onwards will be amplifying their revenue growth. So it's definitely something that a lot of investors should be eyeing on, and we have a very good target price from several brokers to about 17 cents per share, and the stock closed at today about 6.2, and then the placement was done at 6 cents. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity for investors to get back into the company now.
All right, Jimmy, thank you so much. Jimmy Jang from GBA Capital.
All right, drum roll, please. What do you think the stock of the day would be?
Would it have been Nvidia?
Let's take a listen. Mark Moreland from Value 3, Mark Gardner from MPC.
I don't see anything going wrong with the company, but I'm sort of starting to get the feeling it's playing out for these incumbents, and the investors' expectation that they're going to get the same result they've got in the last 3 years is probably a little bit overcooked, and there's the likes of ServiceNow, Salesforce, Apple Oven, Duolingo, like the software companies are starting to monetize at their end, and that'd be where I'd sort of be looking for those next big winners.
I think Nvidia will be 10 trillion within probably 3 years. I think well before the end of the decade. You look at at the moment they've guided, and they've been very good with their guidance. They don't take a wild punt. They've given up plus or minus 2% variation of 65 billion for the next quarter, which is up from 51 billion quarter 3, and they've got a 75% profit margin.
And 8 billion more than the analysts were expecting.
They are the queen of data centers. The spend, and one of the things Jensen said is they're expecting the spend over the next 3 years to be up 3 to 4 trillion. So it's going to average. We're going to get to a trillion a year average, and Nvidia gets about 30% of the spend on total spend on data centers and so on.
Thinking about your pre-Christmas shopping? What if you could buy some stonks on sale? Our final virtual event for the year is Cyber Monday. Join expert analysts live as they share their picks of undervalued equities.
We're looking at between 400 and 500% upside.
Because it is going to rally away very, very soon.
Beat the Christmas rush. Register now for Cyber Monday at ausbiz.co/cyber.
Cyber Monday. We all love a bit of a shop, don't we? But we love shopping for stocks on sale. Stocks that can actually perhaps make you money. Like, well, maybe these ones did today. Don't know when you would have got in to do so, but here you go.
Yep, Block had a great session. We mentioned that, and you rightly pointed out the Bitcoin link there to Liontown. We've just discussed that one. Net wealth A little bit of money going into uranium as well, and Pinnacle investment up almost 7%.
So if we flip the page though and we look at what were the laggards, GQG, I didn't see any news. Catapult, of course, reported. Little bit of market chatter today. We've got the brokers weighing in, of course, in the wake of its result yesterday. UBS saying that the acquisition needs to deliver appropriate returns. Droneshield as well, down by 4.3%.
All right, let's have a look at the small end of town quickly. Lake Resources had a good day, up 21%. Main Pharma as well. I believe that was on more chat about some potential up more than 20%. We talked about the lithium players looking good as well. Let's have a look at the downside in the small end of town. Astron down 7.5% and Wildcat Resources off more than 5%.
So what is happening overnight? Well, do you believe it? We got the U.S. non-farm payroll report for September. Of course, that one was delayed due to the shutdown. So I wonder how markets will digest that one, given, of course, we've since had October and we're now in November. But nonetheless, it will put some color as to that big question Jimmy Jang, phrased at the beginning of the program, just what will the Fed do? So jobless claims as well, that's a weekly report. We get U.S. existing home sales, and we get earnings from Walmart as well.
Tomorrow, some local global S&P PMIs, and then also AGM season continuing. We get Kogan.com, Accent Group, Lovisa, Reese, and WiseTech, which will be very interesting in the wake of all that director reshuffles as well. But today was a good day. It could have gone the other way if Nvidia had given a little bit of nervousness to the market, but it didn't. It came out as, to be fair, it seems to always do. 1.1% gain on the CBO 200. Where's the ASX 200 finish?
Yeah, so it looks as if we're finishing, pretty much a mirror image there, up by 1.25% at 8,552. So look, we'll see how the U.S. market digests. For now, at least, it has put some of those AI bubble fears to rest.
All right, that does it for this edition of the COB. We'll closely watch what happens with Nvidia shares, which rose 5.5% in after-hours trade, and of course the rest of the fallout from Walmart. Be interesting to see Walmart as well, as we mentioned, a bit of a bellwether as to how the consumer's faring.
And tariffs, yep.
Yeah.
All right, stay with us.